Hey guys, Omerko here, self-taught web developer. In today's video we will take a look into difference between var, let and const variables. Let's start it. On my screen you can see that I have my index.html file and that I imported my app.js file into that, and I'm running my index.html on my browser. On a browser we could also see the console off of it, so what I currently have is just the var of name, let of last name and const of color, and I'm logging those three, so you can see the logs of those three here, Paul, Rad and Green. First thing that I wish to talk about is var itself. So I will here use a var of color and set it to be equal to a red. I could console.log this color now, and let me refresh my page. You can see that red is logged in my console. If now I set up my if statement here, so if let me just set true here, so it kinda goes into this if statement, and I set this var color of red here, and now I'm logging that into my console. If I refresh the page, we will still see that red color from my var in my console. But now if I would, instead of this if statement, use a function called getColor, and inside of that function I would set up my color like this, and I try to log my color outside of that function, we will get this error, uncaught reference error. Basically color is not defined. But if I would console log this in my function itself, then I will still get this error, but this console of it, sorry, this is not run, so I will run my get color like this. Let me run it here, refresh. We will still see that red color from a console log that is inside of my function, but outside of my function it will still show me the error. So based on this, the var itself is kinda a global variable, as a var doesn't respect the scope of an if statement or a for loop, but it just respects the scope of a function. So basically with var I could declare my variable inside of the if statement, and outside of it I could use it because it's kind of the global variable. But if I would set it into my function, then I could just use that variable through that function. I cannot use it outside of it. Let's now see the let variable. So let color of red, console.log color. Let's refresh the page. So the color is logged into my console, so let works. So now I will cut this color now and use if statement here. If statement will be set to true like this, and inside I will paste now this color here. Refresh, and you can see the error in my console. So what worked for var, it doesn't really work for let. If I would console log this inside of this statement and refresh the page, you will see that red is consoled, but it will also drop the error here from this console outside of the statement itself. Instead of using the if statement here, I will now use a function get color here, and I will also console.log color inside of my function. Let me call this function down below, so get color like this. If I refresh the page, you will see the same result. So based on this, you can see that let variable kinda respects scopes of a function, of a if statement, and even for a for loop. So if you wish to declare a let variable, you could declare it globally and use it through your code. But if you declare one in if statement or a function or a for loop, you can use that variable, that let variable, just in those. And now let's see what is about the constants. So I will remove my code like this, and I will use a const of color equal to red here, and refresh the page. So constant also works like this globally. But what will happen if I use the if statement here? If set to true, and I use my color inside, I will log this also inside. So if I refresh my page, you can see that my red is logged from my statement, from app.js third line of code, which is this here inside of my statement. But from outside of the statement, it cannot find the color variable, constant of a color variable, so it is dropping me the error, it is showing me the error of color is not defined. If I would use the function now, let me cut this out, so function get color, and inside I would set this constant of color. I will also console.log this color, and outside of it I will run this getColor function. Refresh, we will see the same result. Basically, it logged the color variable constant inside of my function, but outside of it, it couldn't recognize it. So by this, you can also see that the constant is similar, well, in this particular example, same as the let, as it can be set globally and used globally, but it respects the scopes of if statement and a function here. So kinda, if I wish to declare my constant inside of my function or a if statement, I can just use those through if statement or a function. And now there is something more that I wish to show you about this constant, as there is more to it. Constant, well, const stands for constant, so if I use color of constant of color set to red, and down below I use color, same constant, set to blue, and I console.log my color and save and refresh, you can see that it caught kinda an error. So the error is in a line 2, which is this here. And the error says like assignment to constant variable, which means that constant is a constant itself, so it cannot be reassigned. Once we assign the value to the variable, we must use that value through a code. We cannot reassign that value later through a code. Which means even if I would reset my value, so kinda set it to null, it won't work. It will show the same thing as the assignment to constant variable was recognized. But also now here, if I would use a constant of color and I left this kinda not assigned at all, it will drop the next error, missing initializer in const declaration, which means that once we declare constant here, like a constant of color, we must assign the value to it. We cannot use empty constant. If I would use a var here, var of name and let of last name, and I refresh the page, it will still show the error at the third line of my code. So by that you can see that the constant itself must have the value assigned to it from a start, but var and let doesn't need to. So basically we could declare our variables with var and let globally and reassign those as we go through a code. But with constant we must use just one value for the constant and use that value through our file, through our code. So if you had a problem with understanding of this, take a look at this image here and maybe write it down so you could understand it better. So first thing, var is almost global variable as it doesn't respect scopes of if statements and for loops. But var respects just the scope of a function. So basically, which means that if we wish to declare a var inside of our function, we can use that var just through that function. But if we assign the var inside of our if statement, for loop or globally, we can use that var all over our code, right? Let itself, let respects all scopes. And also if we wish to declare our let globally, we can use it globally. So basically if we declare our let inside of our if statement, for loop function, we can just use that let variable inside of those as it respects scopes of those. For constant it's the same thing. Constant also respects the scopes of if statement, for loops and functions, and also if we wish to declare it globally, we can do that globally. But once we declare that constant, we cannot reassign the value for that constant, because constant should be a constant. It cannot reassign the value for that. The value that we assigned initially will be the value used through the code, through the whole file. And also, constant must have assigned value from creation of that. So once you create the constant in your code, and you don't assign the value to it, you will get the error. You need to basically assign the value from creation of that constant so you could use that constant through your code. Thank you all for coming. I hope that you learned something new or at least upgraded your skills a bit. Don't forget to like and subscribe as I'm posting new content weekly. Thank you and see you in the next video.